So, to start today, special thanks to Aeon Genesis for the fan translations of this game, such that I actually have a means of reviewing it in full. And this time, I won't be raking it over the coals, for the most part. I mean, haven't you at home always wanted an RPG where you can play as a robot, a ninja, a cowboy, and a kung fu master all in one party? Now's your chance! Join me, won't you, for a closer look at Squaresoft's Live Alive. Greetings everyone, this is the hipster Snek, and today we're going to be taking a dive into Squaresoft's 1994 SNES RPG, Live Alive. And yes, that is how it's pronounced, and my kanji reading friend Lona Ranger verified the title as Live Alive, so please spare me in the comments about how the title is quote-unquote meant to be said. Anyway, it never saw release outside of Japan, and due to complications concerning certain legalities I'll get to momentarily, it likely never will. For equally various, but no less stupid reasons, all I can do for you is to link you guys to the Aeon Genesis page of the game's translation patch. The legwork is yours from there. Anyway, let's get into what makes this particular Square RPG worth talking about versus any other. The conceit is actually rather brilliant. The game opens with 7 different chapters, each with their own themes, motifs, and most interestingly of all, their own artists who designed each setting in their own style. So let's start there, I suppose. Overall, the game looks amazing. It's brightly colored and detailed, with each of the 7 chapters available in the beginning having their own themes. From cityscapes to desert waste to larger-than-life wrestling rings and everything in between, Live Alive just looks astounding. The in-battle sprites deserve special mention because not only are they vividly detailed, but even the enemies, mostly static sprites, have a lot of detail put into them, especially as almost all have a front and back-facing sprite. More on why this is important in a moment. I just love the designs and the art in this game, and trust me, I'll have much more to say on this as we go, peppered throughout each chapter synopsis, so let's move on for now. Oh, and the music. Man, the music is good. As it rightfully should be, coming from a combined effort of 90 Square and Yoko Shimomura, hot off the tail of doing composition work for Breath of Fire. The music is fantastic. From high-flying chapter anthems like Wanderer, which captures an Ennio Morricone film sort of vibe in its Western presentation, or A Painful Death at the Hands of a Murderous Psycho, yes, that is the name of a song in this game, being all excellent and frenetic fight songs. And no, I'm not going to mention that one song because you internet types have already ruined it. Maybe next time you'll treat something good with a little bit better care, Anyway, mechanically, Live Alive is an RPG with very simple systems and means. For starters, you're either in a simple overworld, or you're in combat. There's no in-betweens. You heal to 100% between every fight, and you have no MP. Instead, you spend turns in order to execute bigger, flashier abilities. And since moving one step on a grid is considered a turn, you'll soon find that the combat engine is very fluid and an engaging experience. And speaking of experience, you won't be grinding all that much, unless you're playing as Acura or Masaru, because every single character learns all of their attacks and abilities that they can master by level 16. In fact, courtesy of some devilishly interesting game mechanics, being over level 20 can actually become disadvantageous for you. But to explain is to spoil, so let's take a step back and break down the chapters individually. I'll start with Cube's chapter, the Sci-Fi one, because it's really the one the game devs figured you'd play first, as it's the most lenient in many respects and teaches the player that their actions have consequences. Yumi Tamamura is credited as the art lead for this chapter, and if you don't immediately see the parallels between this chapter and the film Alien, I have to assume you never saw the film Alien? Anyhow, the chapter opens on the spaceship, the Cogito Ergo Sum, and no, I don't know why it's named for an argument against existentialism, but it is, as one of the crewmates assembles a round, pleasant-looking robot buddy, who he nicknames Cube. Fun bit of trivia, keep an eye on all the crew's names and all the movie references that you can spot therein. But a mystery gets underway as members of the crew suddenly start coming up room temperature, and Cube must get to the bottom of it all the while avoiding the now free space behemoth alien creature and not blowing himself out of airlocks, because yes, you can do that to yourself and the game will not warn you against doing so, since it already presented that information to you ahead of time. Cube's chapter mostly focuses on navigating the ship, and apart from the minigame Captain's Square, where you can play at your leisure, you generally won't engage in traditional RPG combat much at all in this chapter. Once he does get his combat abilities, Cube is generally the best healer and has lots of interesting attacks to his name, and since he never actually levels up, being that he is a robot, can actually make the endgame much easier as a result of his presence. Next is Acuras chapter, the near future story, which had its characters designed by Kazuhiko Shimamoto, which is not very good mechanically. Acuras chapter is heavily weighed down by inconsistent story beats, a clumsy overworld design, the fact that Acura, very early in his chapter, gets his run command replaced with teleport, which can plunk him into various spots on the map without meaning to go to them when all you really want to do is get away from the random encounters. Couple all the above with the fact that Acura's attacks are not very good except for sweeping, and the real muscle of your party is his best friend and his pet turtle turned into a cyborg. This chapter is insane and insanely frustrating. It follows the story of Acura, who has psychic powers, and his buddy Matsu, as they pursue the motorcycle gang the Crusaders up until they aren't anymore, and then it turns out the government has some kind of huge super weapon that devours people. I want to like this chapter, and it's difficult because nothing about it is intuitive at all. Moving on. Next is the present day chapter starring Masaru, a Japanese wrestler who wants to learn all the great combat tactics from around the world. This chapter was designed by Ryoji Minagawa, which is pretty fitting since he also worked on several of the Tekken installments. This chapter breaks the mold quite a bit, allowing the players a Mega Man-style boss gauntlet where they can choose to battle any opponent at any time they please. Furthering that comparison to Mega Man, when Masaru is targeted by one of the opponent's special attacks, he has the chance to learn the move and in turn use it for himself. My advice for this chapter: use his battle cry ability a lot and run away for the start of most of the fights. This will buff Masaru up to handle more dangerous threats. No, it's not heroic, but it will definitely give him better longevity in these matches. Defeat all 6 contenders to see his story through to its completion. Next is the Cowboy chapter, drawn by Osamu Ishiwata and starring the Sundown Kid in a spaghetti western, but a JRPG. This makes perfect sense. As any good western should, the story starts with a duel between fated rivals as a Sundown Kid defeats Mad Dog with skill on a totally different level from ordinary gunfighters. He blows into a small, poor town, which is under constant threat of siege by local ruffians. Pushed to the point where they simply have no choice, Sundown and Mad Dog agree to work together in order to establish a series of traps within a short window of time in order to protect the townspeople from the gang. This is among the shorter chapters in the game and one of the more clever, as most of the items you'll gather up will be used as traps by the townsfolk in one fashion or another. There's only 3 battles in the entire course of this chapter's duration. Sundown himself is the very definition of a glass cannon hero, and his gunplay skills give him attacks reflective of the movement of pieces and chests, giving him huge effectiveness no matter where he is in the field. I'll admit to my own personal biases, and this is one of my favorite bits in the game because of them, since it really does play out like it's a Western movie. Next is the Ninja chapter, drawn by Gosho Aoyama, where ninja trainee Oboromaru is sent in to rescue a political prisoner from the local lord. The upside of this chapter is there's a lot going on, including revolving passwords, the option to employ stealth when you want, and a wide array of neat ninja powers once you get a few levels under your belt. Downside is that you really aren't told what exactly results in you getting rewarded and what gets you nothing. The better part of this aspect revolves around our handy-dandy kilometer, always on display, showing just how many lives we've claimed. Man, I can't imagine why this wasn't allowed to come to the Western world in the era of heavy-handed Nintendo censorship policy. Anyway, if you kill 100 people, which doesn't count the respawning spirit or any monster enemies, just people, you'll get a special reward. If you can get through and kill 0 people, you get a different special reward. If you go through without killing any women, you get yet another different reward. And you can miss out an entire optional party member by mishandling the coin items, the closest moment in the entire game to having something akin to a currency system, or by going the wrong way with said party member in your party. See what I mean when I say this chapter is probably the first and perhaps only chapter where you'll probably take advantage of the fact that after completing them, you're free to replay the chapter from the beginning in order to try again for better results? I like the Ninja chapter, but never let it be said that it didn't cause me at least a little stress going through it. Next is one of the more interesting chapters in the game, the Kung Fu chapter, drawn by Yoshihide Fujiwara. You begin as the wise old master, who decides that in his twilight years of his life, it is about time to choose a successor. So he rounds up 3 plucky youths and begins to train them. At this moment, you should pick one of the 3, the small, agile Yuan, the large and tanky Samo, or my personal favorite choice of Lee Kugo, and put all your training into 1 and 1 alone. Not only will they have a chance to learn some of the attacks from the old master by using them on them repeatedly, but they'll get significant stat bonuses for your having done so. This chapter is weirdly zen, I must say, which is likely by design, but the piece is broken when a rival kung fu school attacks and will kill off the students who you put less attention into. And no, there's no way to train them all perfectly evenly, as each training scenario gives you 4 training sessions, so one character will always get more than the others. This is also a great starting point in the game if you want a chapter that will give you some leeway as a newcomer. And lastly, the Caveman chapter, designed by Yoshinori Kobayashi. Set before mankind had established spoken language, this cartoony chapter has highly animated and slapsticky means of conveying the simple plotline about 2 rival colonies of cavemen. One is attempting to sacrifice a cave lady to their deity in order to sate its bloodlust, and in lieu of a currency system, you use a system of trade and crafting in order to power Pogo, the lead caveman of the tale, and buff him up. It's a story of love and silly cartoon monkeys doing silly cartoon things. And here, I need to let the newcomers know, spoilers abound. So feel free to skip ahead to the timestamp now listed on screen if you don't want this ruined for you. I'll wait a moment so you can make up your mind. Good? Okay. So, after completing the 7 chapters to your satisfaction, you'll unlock the 8th chapter, the Medieval Knight chapter, where you take the role of Oersted. We then watch as all hell breaks loose time after time as he is tricked, betrayed, and has all his friends rather brutally killed off, until the heroic knight can take it no longer. He descends into madness, declaring himself the new king of demons, and takes on the name Odio, or Hatred. We then see that all the final boss encounters of the 7 prior chapters have actually been incarnations of the same monstrous hate, all having names that incorporate Odio in some fashion. This leads into probably the coolest possible climax, where all 7 heroes are gathered together, and you're prompted to make a party out of all of them in your own way, and see through to the game's multiple possible endings. See if you can't find them all. Now, all that being said, what complaints would I issue? Well, for as brief a game as it is, it sure has a lot of moments where newcomer players will have zero idea of what they're supposed to do. The Ninja and Near Future chapters spring to mind. But honestly, with a little trial and error, there's plenty of ways to discover what's expected. And even if they get an ending they aren't satisfied with, they can replay any chapter at any time to work towards a better outcome. So even all that taken into consideration, Live Alive is an amazing and solid title. It's a real shame that this game has not gotten an official Western release, as it totally deserves one. It's an astoundingly solid game with heart and charm in spades. You get to play as a robot, a cowboy, a ninja, all in one game. What more do you people need? Play Live Alive, you owe it to yourself. And that's the final word on this obscure game. This has been the Sundown Snek, bringing another amazing game to light for your delight. If you liked today's episode, tap the like button, and for more like it each week, you can hit the subscribe and bell icons too. It helps me out a lot. Leave a comment down below telling me what your favorite characters and chapters are. And join me here each week for more Snek Plays, obscure reviews, and the new home of the Tomodachi Bros Review podcast and more. And I will see you there.